Tonight, superstorm danger. Hurricane Sandy bears down on the mid-Atlantic coast after killing at least 58 people across the Caribbean. Meteorologist David Bernard is tracking the storm. Officials in crowded low-lying areas scramble to prepare for a projected threat from high tides. Chip Reed and Elaine Quijano are watching the coastline.
You're taking this very seriously.
Yes, we are.
Hi there.
Every vote counts. The presidential campaigns go door to door in the early voting states. Terrell Brown reports on the Colorado ground game. And what happens to Afghanistan's opium-growing region once the U.S. troops leave? Kelly Kobiea files a reporter's notebook.
This is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Brennan. Hurricane Sandy is churning its way up the East Coast this evening, heading for landfall in the mid-Atlantic region early next week and a rendezvous with a wintry storm system from the west. Here's the latest. Sandy has already killed at least 58 people in the Caribbean. A state of emergency has now been declared in 9 states and the District of Columbia. We have a team of correspondents standing by, and we begin with our hurricane consultant, David Bernard, at our Miami station, WFOR. David, good evening.
Well, good evening, Margaret. Not much change on the storm in intensity or the expected track. The latest from the National Hurricane Center puts Sandy to 75-mile-per-hour storm, 345 miles south of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, moving to the northeast at 13. Based on that track, the best chance for significant winds, meaning 58 miles per hour or greater, are going to be in that area from the Delmarva along the Jersey Shore right into the New York City metropolitan area. And when we talk about significant winds, we're talking about winds that have a good chance of causing power outages and also a lot of downed trees.
David, how much flooding should we expect?
Well, coastal flooding could be a huge problem, and already there's evacuations being ordered along the coast because of that. And we have two things going on. We have the angle of approach. The storm is going to make that turn and move directly west or west-northwest into the coastline, and that causes the highest storm surge in some of these locations. And also we have the full moon in effect with multiple tide cycles. We may have to go through more than one high tide during this event, and that's just going to only pile up the water that much higher. You really need to listen to what your local emergency management officials are saying if they're telling you to evacuate.
A busy week for you, David. Thank you. Millions of people are bracing for the storm. Chip Reed is standing by in Ocean City, Maryland. Elaine Quijano is in Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey. We begin with Chip Reed. Chip, good evening.
Well, good evening, Margaret. Yesterday, the mayor of Ocean City, Maryland, said that a mandatory evacuation was not even on the table. But today, he announced that for people in low-lying areas, they should begin to prepare for evacuation.
At the Home Depot, a few miles from the Maryland coast, worried shoppers today were snapping up plywood, generators, flashlights, and whatever else might help protect them from the wrath of Hurricane Sandy.
Where we are, there's a lot of trees. Right outside Ocean City, so we're taping our windows.
So you're taking this very seriously.
Yes, we are.
Sandy has already inflicted enormous suffering. As she roared through the Caribbean, she caused at least 44 deaths in Haiti, where mudslides flattened shelters built after the 2010 earthquake. In Cuba, the storm killed 11 more, another in the Bahamas, and one in Puerto Rico. Now, as Sandy takes aim at the most densely populated region in the U.S., about 64 million people, more than 1 in 5 Americans, potentially lie in the storm's path. Also in her sights are 5 oil refineries, which produce 7% of the nation's gasoline. They're expected to suspend operations as early as Sunday, putting upward pressure on the price of gas. Some Navy ships stationed near Virginia Beach have been ordered out to sea to ride out the storm. Last year, Hurricane Irene caused a loss of power for more than 6 million households in the mid-Atlantic and the northeastern U.S. Forecasters say Sandy could leave even more in the dark. Today, millions of people like Robin Ledbetter are nervously calculating their chances.
How likely do you think it is that you're going to need this generator?
Like maybe 50%.
Just north of here, the governor of Delaware has ordered a mandatory evacuation of many coastal areas. North of that, on the coast of New Jersey, is Elaine Quijano. Elaine?
Well, Chip, this storm could make landfall somewhere between Delaware Bay and Long Island Sound Monday night into Tuesday morning. But here in New Jersey, the governor has already declared a state of emergency, and the weather conditions are expected to begin deteriorating here tonight.
I'm taking it seriously.
James Bradley says in 25 years here in Point Pleasant Beach, he'd only boarded up once. Now he's doing it again.
But it's really the first time a hurricane's been on our doorstep. So
businesses along New Jersey's boardwalk are bracing for Hurricane Sandy. Just days before shop owners hoped to lure in crowds for Halloween, crews took down those decorations and put up sheets of plywood instead. Forecasters say the storm surge combined with high tide could bring floodwaters farther inland. Water levels could rise 4 to 8 feet above normal from along the Delaware Bay to Rhode Island. The worst damage could happen north of where the storm makes landfall. Bulldozers are shoring up miles of sand dunes, and residents are hoping walls of sandbags will hold. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has ordered people on barrier islands to evacuate.
The damage to homes and the shoreline, beach erosion, we're going to be looking at some pretty significant damage to the shore. Then I think this could be more severe than Irene.
Among those packing up are seniors at Francis Asbury Manor in Ocean Grove.
You just don't know, so you do what you're told.
Charlotte McDevitt doesn't like the idea of leaving home.
This is my first experience for an evacuation. I hope I don't have to go through it again. It's very frightening.
After it comes ashore, the storm is expected to move inland slowly. That means an increased risk of downed trees, power outages, flooding, and Margaret, in some areas, heavy snow.
Thanks, Elaine. The hurricane is playing havoc with campaign schedules. Both Vice President Joe Biden and Mitt Romney canceled rallies in Virginia Beach, Virginia this weekend. And as Nancy Cordes reports, President Obama received a FEMA briefing on the storm before leaving for New Hampshire.
We're not going to be able to be in Virginia tomorrow. We're going to go to Ohio instead.
Hurricane Sandy is forcing both campaigns to make adjustments. Mitt Romney canceled 3 events in Virginia. Vice President Biden and First Lady Michelle Obama also called off rallies.
10 days, New Hampshire. 10 days.
After getting briefed on the storm today, President Obama took his hunt for votes to the Live Free or Die state, where he told a group of local Teamsters that New Hampshire's 4 electoral votes could make all the difference.
The work that unions do is at stake, because it's very clear that the other side doesn't believe.
Governor Romney spent the day in all-important Florida. In Pensacola, home to a major naval air station, Romney brought up a sore spot from the final debate.
I made the point that our Navy is now smaller than any time, in almost 100 years. And the president's response was, we don't use bayonets and horses anymore. And in fact, we do use bayonets.
Both candidates are accusing each other of failed leadership. President Obama said Romney hiked fees on everything as governor of Massachusetts.
He raised fees to get a birth certificate, which would have been expensive for me.
Romney said Mr. Obama broke promises to cut the deficit and save Medicare.
He is shrinking from the magnitude of the times.
Oh, you got these guys.
And both sides are wary of the impact on polling locations if prolonged power outages or storm damage prevents voters from casting their ballots, especially in states where early voting is already underway.
President Obama has adjusted his schedule to stay out of Sandy's path. He's flying to Florida half a day early tomorrow, and he's getting regular updates from his staff. And Margaret, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more changes to his schedule as the week goes on, depending on the severity of the storm.
Nancy Cordes in Washington. Thank you. Overseas now, Indonesian police have arrested 11 people suspected of planning attacks on the U.S. Embassy and other American and international targets. The suspects were arrested in Jakarta and 3 other provinces on the island of Java. Police seized live bombs, explosive materials, and a bomb-making manual. The leader of al-Qaeda is calling on supporters to kidnap more Westerners in order to get al-Qaeda prisoners in the United States released. Ayman al-Zawahiri made the statement in a 2-hour video posted on jihadist websites. He also called on Muslims to support the uprising in Syria. A 4-day ceasefire to mark the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha is crumbling fast in Syria. Activists say at least 49 people were killed across the country today in clashes between government troops and rebels. In Damascus, a warplane bomb flattened a 3-story building, killing 8 men. Later, the surprisingly close Arizona race that could decide control of the Senate. Will either presidential candidate's plans help this man keep his house? And the door-to-door battle for early voters in Colorado. Those stories when the CBS Evening News continues. Early voting began today in both Maryland and Florida, the battleground state that was at the heart of the disputed 2000 election. And in Colorado, voting has been underway since Monday. The most recent poll there shows the candidates in a dead heat, which is why both sides are going all out. Terrell Brown has more.
In Boulder County, Colorado, Matt Romney joined volunteers going door to door.
I'm Matt Romney. I'm Mitt Romney's son. He's running for president.
The campaigns are getting down to basics, hoping personal outreach will help push those final votes.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Great to meet you, Ron.
Thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Will we put this at right here?
More than 70% of Colorado voters are expected to vote before Election Day. With the candidates tied, both parties are scrambling to get as many ballots as possible in the bag.
You voted yet?
No, but I got the ballot.
Okay, sweet. Put that in.
At the University of Denver, Steph Windsor and the Young Democrats were canvassing the campus,
Do you want anything?
offering coffee and donuts to help energize the base. Nationally, President Obama still dominates the youth vote.
I was calling to find out if he was going to be supporting Mitt Romney.
But a Harvard Institute of Politics study finds more young Romney supporters say they will definitely go vote.
If everyone voted who wanted to vote, who could vote, we'd be blue without a doubt. The issue is getting them to the polls.
First-time voter Steven Stannis says he's definitely going to vote. He's just not sure for whom.
It's a matter of just kind of figuring out where I stand on the political landscape.
And the pressure to choose is building, he says, fueled by strong supporters on both sides of the race.
Have a good day.
Terrell Brown, CBS News, Washington.
Next on tonight's CBS Evening News, we'll look at a key race in the battle over control of the U.S. Senate. Republicans are counting on some key races across the country to help regain control of the U.S. Senate. Right now, Democrats have a 53-47 majority. Republicans only need to pick up 4 seats. But as Carter Evans reports, a surprisingly close Senate race in Arizona threatens those plans.
Thanks for being here.
After 6 terms, Congressman Jeff Flake seemed perfectly groomed for Arizona's open Senate seat.
Open seats in Arizona come along with the frequency of Halley's Comet.
But in heavily Republican Arizona, few saw this man coming.
Thanks, guys.
Democrat Richard Carmona.
We went from underdog, nice guy 11 months ago, then it became possibly winnable, and now it's eminently winnable.
Carmona has never held public office, but on his resume, decorated Vietnam War veteran, police officer, and U.S. Surgeon General in the Bush administration.
A resume is not a plan. If you're going to the Senate, you better be willing to have a position and stick to it. And that's what we haven't seen with my opponent.
Flake says he'll bring political experience to the Senate. Carmona says he'll bring real-world experience.
Democracy works best and only works when we compromise, and they're not compromising now.
Democrats are pressing hard with a rally starring former President Bill Clinton. And of course, a close race means negative ads.
Congressman Jeff Flake helps himself, not us.
My opponent was handpicked by President Obama, so you know what he'll do.
Negative advertising works, unfortunately.
Barack Obama's rubber stamp.
No campaign ever wants to see their ads as negative. They're contrast pieces.
With Carmona leading by up to 10% among women, Flake's campaign is airing this contrast piece.
Carmona is not who he seems. He has issues with anger, with ethics, and with women.
Within 24 hours, the Carmona campaign fired back.
Rich treats everyone with respect. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female.
The key to this race could be Arizona's Latino population. Carmona has a commanding lead among Hispanics by more than 3 to 1. And on the campaign trail, he plays up his Puerto Rican heritage.
because I am one of them. They understand, I understand the culture, the language, and the challenges of immigrant families.
But Latino support doesn't translate to votes, says Arizona State University professor Bruce Merrill.
The problem has been that the Hispanics have not voted. They simply have not gone to the polls on election day.
With the race in a dead heat,
You have no idea how it works back there.
the debates ever more contentious, each candidate's message could depend on who actually hears it.
It's your bill and you voted against it.
Carter Evans, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Ahead, he's a man in the middle of the campaign debate over how to slow the pace of foreclosures. The latest numbers show America's housing crisis is easing. The number of foreclosures nationwide are down 16% from September of last year. But in Florida, one of the hardest hit states, foreclosures are still on the rise, up 24%. Manuel Bojorquez in Fort Lauderdale has one man's story.
72-year-old Pat Juneau has spent 2 years trying to hold on to his home in Fort Lauderdale.
You're angry. You angry? Beyond that.
Juneau went into foreclosure after his dry cleaning business failed. The Air Force veteran's only income is Social Security, not nearly enough to pay his $2,800 a month mortgage.
I'm trying to call everybody I can, send them letters, trying to get them to help me instead of throwing me into the street.
And
absolutely no responses.
18 of the 50 cities with the highest foreclosure rates are in battleground states: Florida, Ohio, Wisconsin, Colorado, and Nevada.
We're going to finally get this housing market going and get jobs again, get this economy growing.
Mitt Romney's solution would be to ease government regulations to encourage lenders to offer refinancing to more homeowners.
Foreclosures are the lowest in 5 years.
President Obama wants to expand refinancing programs for borrowers. He wants to include mortgages owned by banks. Obama also wants lenders to offer unemployed homeowners a 1-year grace period from foreclosure.
And we're feeling very abandoned.
Juneau isn't sure either plan can help him in time. He hopes the bank will agree to sell his house for $200,000 less than he owes.
And all the taxes I paid in the past and all the things I did for my country and the service is wasted. My life feels like it's a waste.
With a failed business and a foreclosure on his credit report, Juneau won't be able to even consider buying another home for at least 3 years. Manuel Bojorquez, CBS News, Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Coming up, a reporter's notebook on Afghan farmers' dependence on illicit crops. Planting season is getting underway in Afghanistan, and the plans of local farmers may be a good indication of where that war-torn country is headed. Kelly Kobiea has been on the ground in Helmand Province and files this reporter's notebook.
This is poppy-growing land, opium land. All I can see from miles around our marine convoy is dust. No one lives here in the hot, dry summer. The farmers and nomads are just starting to return to stake out their land and plant their crops. The Marines have only been here a few weeks and they're still getting to know the locals.
Can we move him down there?
The Marines tell us the Taliban control this area. They hide and take pot shots at soldiers. It's safer to talk inside the maze of mud homes. The village elder tells us they'll grow cannabis this year to make hashish instead of poppies for heroin.
They basically grow weed.
Demand is growing, and the government has no program to destroy cannabis crops, only poppy. The only Afghan troops we saw were back at Camp Bastion, more than an hour's drive away, marching for the benefit of reporters. We weren't allowed to talk to a single soldier. Back in Boldak, I asked the village elder what will happen when the Marines leave. He answers with one word: war. He blames Pakistan for supplying the Taliban. When it's time to leave, the cameras are off. But I'll never forget the goodbye from the local children. They smile, they wave, then they pelt us with rocks. Kelly Kobiea, CBS News, Helmand Province, Afghanistan.
Updating our top story now, Hurricane Sandy is moving northward off the East Coast, headed toward landfall near the Maryland-Delaware border late Monday or early Tuesday. Strong winds, heavy rain, and storm surges of up to 8 feet will likely impact 64 million people in the nation's most densely populated region. A state of emergency has been declared in 9 states, and evacuations have already been ordered in low-lying areas of New Jersey and Delaware. And that is the CBS Evening News. Later on CBS, 48 Hours. I'm Margaret Brennan, CBS News in New York. Good night.